down and work out a deal with a USMCA deal that he created and was not changed at all under President Biden. He said it was the greatest deal. The whole thing with President Trump was an absolute mess. You know, this reprieve, we went down this road before. You know, he still threatens the tariffs on April the 2nd.
And the 25% on electricity exports, will that take effect regardless of what happens today? I mean, if he pulls back, so you guys are going to follow through?
We have to follow through.
Did you just hear what Danielle Smith told Doug Ford? Alberta's premier has just refused to sacrifice her province's oil in Canada's pathetic trade war with America. Smith drew a hard line yesterday, making it crystal clear that Alberta's resources won't be political pawns. While Ford's busy cooking up his 25% electricity surcharge schemes that mirror Trudeau's failed playbook, Smith is actually protecting her province's economic interests. This isn't just provincial squabbling. It's about whether Canada's resource-rich provinces should keep getting exploited as bargaining chips in Ottawa's political games. The meeting room doors just slammed shut, but what happened inside is sending shockwaves across Canada. Doug Ford thought he had the perfect plan to hit back at Trump's tariffs, but he never expected what came next. In a stunning move that's left political insiders speechless, Ford attempted to leverage Alberta's oil industry as a bargaining chip against the United States, proposing a massive 25% surcharge on energy exports heading south of the border.
He's putting everything on hold for 30 days, and we know what happened last time. He said 30 days, and a week later or 2 weeks later, he brings the tariffs back.
And the 25% on electricity exports, will that take effect regardless of what happens today? I mean, if he pulls back, so you guys are going to follow through?
We have to follow through. It's a stove. Once you get burnt, you don't touch that stove again. And we're going to make sure that we follow through with what we said we were going to do. Until we get a deal, we're going to add more tariff.
This wasn't just any proposal. This was Ford's nuclear option, a desperate power play designed to show Trump that Canada wouldn't be pushed around. But Ford's strategy wasn't just about standing up to American bullying. It was about forcing Alberta to bear the economic burden while Ontario remained comfortably insulated from any meaningful sacrifice. What's particularly revealing isn't just the proposal itself, but how Ford tried to execute it. Instead of publicly floating the idea where it could be debated in the open, Ford took his scheme behind closed doors, attempting to rally Canada's premiers against Alberta in a classic divide-and-conquer strategy. His calculation was simple but cynical. If enough provincial leaders ganged up on Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, she'd be forced to cave under the collective pressure. Country comes first, Ford reportedly insisted during this heated closed-door meeting, a convenient patriotic slogan that somehow never seems to apply when Ontario's auto sector might face similar economic pain. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Demanding Alberta torch its economic engine for the national good, while fiercely protecting industries in his own political backyard. This isn't just political opportunism. It's the same tired playbook that resource-rich provinces have endured for generations under Liberal governments. The strategy always remains the same. Sacrifice Western resources to score political points with voters in central Canada. Ford, despite his conservative branding, appears to have embraced this liberal tradition with alarming enthusiasm. What Ford didn't count on was Smith's backbone. When confronted with Ford's ultimatum, the Alberta premier didn't fold as expected. Instead, the meeting reportedly turned explosive as Smith flatly rejected the proposal, standing firm against what would amount to economic suicide for her province.
Economic threats of their own. Earlier this month on Power Lunch, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, said he would go to the extent of cutting off energy exports to the United States if necessary, all of that. So when you look at that amount, is that even realistic to cut off, say, Alberta's energy exports to the United States?
Frankly, I have a little bit of a difference of opinion with my Ontario counterpart, and maybe it's because we are the principal supplier of oil and gas to the United States. We know how vitally important.
You could almost see Ford's frustration mounting as his grand scheme collapsed in real time, his political miscalculation exposed for all to see. Let's be honest about what was really happening here. Ford was desperately searching for a win after being thoroughly embarrassed by Trump, who had forced the Ontario Premier to back down on his proposed electricity tariffs. Humiliated and looking for a quick political victory, Ford saw Alberta's oil industry as the perfect scapegoat, distant enough from his voting base that sacrificing it wouldn't cost him politically. The stunning hypocrisy reveals a fundamental truth about Canadian politics. Resource-rich provinces like Alberta are still viewed as expendable by central Canadian politicians. Ford's willingness to demand Alberta's sacrifice while fiercely defending Ontario's economic interests isn't an anomaly. It's the continuation of the regional favoritism that has defined Canadian politics for decades. For anyone who's been paying attention, this behavior fits a disturbing pattern. When Ontario or Quebec face economic challenges, it becomes a national crisis, requiring immediate federal attention. But when Western provinces suffer, they're told to accept their hardship as necessary for national unity. Ford's power play attempted to reinforce this destructive dynamic. Smith's refusal to play along represents something genuinely revolutionary in Canadian politics. By standing firm against enormous pressure, she rejected the notion that Alberta's resources should be political pawns in a game that would devastate her province, while letting central Canada dictate Western economic policy yet again. The showdown exposed the fundamental inequity at the heart of Canadian federalism, the expectation that resource provinces should willingly accept economic harm when politically convenient for Ottawa or Ontario, without any reciprocal sacrifice from those same regions. Smith's defiance forces a long overdue conversation about this imbalance. That conversation about federal-provincial imbalance just got a lot more interesting. While critics label Smith's stance reckless, they're conveniently ignoring history's painful lesson. Every time Alberta's resources have been used as bargaining chips in trade disputes, the province suffered while central Canada reaped the political rewards. But this time, something fundamental has changed in Canada's power dynamic. Smith isn't just refusing to sacrifice her province. She's quietly orchestrating a complete revolution in how Alberta engages with the rest of North America. Unlike her predecessors, who eventually caved to federal pressure, Smith is actively building relationships with Texas and other U.S. states to secure Alberta's economic future. This isn't just provincial protectionism, it's a sophisticated strategy to make the federal government completely irrelevant to Alberta's prosperity. The federal response to Smith's defiance reveals just how unprepared Ottawa was for a premier who actually means what she says.
A lot for the domestic consumption, which keeps the price of gasoline low. We've been told that if a 25% tariff does indeed come in across the board, it would increase the price of gasoline by $1 a gallon. And I don't see that a trade war benefits American consumers, certainly doesn't benefit Canadian consumers. And I think we'd be much stronger together.
Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne nervously suggested that all options, including leveraging Alberta's resources, should be considered in trade negotiations. Meanwhile, Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson went even further, floating the idea that limiting oil and gas exports could be an effective countermeasure against Trump's tariffs. These federal ministers are playing a dangerous game they clearly don't understand. By suggesting Alberta's lifeblood should be sacrificed on the altar of trade politics, they're not just risking provincial relations. They're potentially alienating key economic partners south of the border. This short-sighted approach perfectly encapsulates Ottawa's fundamental misunderstanding of Western economic interests. What's particularly revealing is how quickly the establishment has resorted to their tired playbook, labeling Smith's position as reckless and claiming she undermines Canada's chances in trade negotiations. It's the same guilt trip rhetoric that's been deployed against Western provinces for generations. The unspoken assumption is that Alberta should willingly accept economic devastation for some nebulous greater good that somehow never requires equal sacrifice from Ontario or Quebec. The hypocrisy is staggering when you consider the historical context. Western Canadian resources have repeatedly been used as bargaining chips in trade disputes, with past Liberal policies exploiting these regional assets for political gain. Smith's stance isn't just about this specific conflict with Ford. It's a direct rejection of a decades-old pattern where resource provinces are expected to smile while being economically kneecapped by decisions made in Ottawa boardrooms. What Smith understands, and what has central Canadian politicians panicking, is that Alberta holds more economic cards than ever before. As global energy markets evolve and American states seek reliable energy partners, Alberta's strategic position strengthens daily. Smith's direct diplomacy with U.S. states demonstrates she recognizes that provincial interests no longer need to be filtered through the federal government's political lens. This approach forces Canadians to confront an uncomfortable question. Why should Alberta's energy sector face economic punishment in a trade dispute they had no role in creating? While Ontario's auto industry and Quebec's aerospace sector receive billions in federal support and protection, Alberta's oil companies are somehow expected to absorb crippling financial blows for Team Canada. Smith is simply pointing out this double standard that has gone unchallenged for too long. Critics claim Smith is undermining national trade strategy, but they miss the deeper reality. Canada has never had a truly national trade strategy that values Western interests equally. When was the last time Ontario was asked to sacrifice its manufacturing base to protect Alberta's energy exports? The answer is never, because that scenario would be considered politically unthinkable in Ottawa. The most significant aspect of Smith's defiance isn't just her refusal to fall in line. It's how she's completely reframing the conversation around provincial sovereignty. By building direct economic relationships with American states and refusing to let Alberta's resources become political pawns, she's establishing a new model for how provinces can operate within the Federation while protecting their core interests. The battle lines are now clearly drawn across Canada, with Alberta standing firm against the old power centers that have dominated national policy for generations. What we're witnessing isn't just another petty political spat. It's the beginning of a fundamental realignment of Canadian Confederation. Smith's showdown with Ford has exposed the raw nerve at the center of our country's politics. The expectation that Western resources exist primarily to be sacrificed for central Canadian priorities. As trade tensions with America heat up, Smith faces mounting pressure from all sides. The federal government and eastern premiers will undoubtedly intensify their demands for Alberta to take one for the team, the same tired refrain resource provinces have heard for decades. The confrontation raises uncomfortable questions about what national unity actually means in Canada. Has it always been code for Western submission to Eastern interests? Smith's refusal to back down represents something we haven't seen in Canadian politics for generations. A resource province with the confidence to chart its own course regardless of what Ottawa and Toronto demand. Whether she can maintain this defiance remains to be seen, but one thing is painfully clear. The old model of Alberta automatically falling in line with central Canada's priorities is crumbling before our eyes.